Welcome to Sit, Stay, Read, the podcast for every wag, whinny, and whisker. I'm Kathleen Donnelly, award-winning author and retired canine handler. Each week, I chat with novelists about the bond we share with our furry friends and how they inspire stories. Grab a coffee, get cozy with your favorite pet. It's time to sit, stay, read. Well, today I am very excited to welcome to the show Devon Mihesuah to discuss her debut thriller, Blood Relay. Devon's she's had an amazing career, a teacher, historian, scientist, now debut thriller writer. She's published numerous important nonfiction works, and this book is a page turner. So, Devon, thank you for joining us today to tell us more about your story.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've been excited. I told you before we started recording, I saw the cover of the book and it just immediately grabbed me. It just seemed like there was so much history with the horses and the designs painted on them, and we do learn that they mean a lot. Tell us a little bit about Blood Relay and how it came about, your inspiration.
Well, Blood Relay is a mystery thriller, and it is about a young Indian horse relay rider named Dell's Billy, who is kidnapped on her way back home from a race outside of Oklahoma City to her home in McAllister. And it's up to detectives Perry Antelope, who is Choctaw, and her partner, Sophia Burns, to figure out where she is, what happened to her. So this book delves into a variety of timely issues. The issue
Yes.
of missing and murdered Indigenous women and boys and men. It also focuses on Indian horse relay riders that a lot of people really don't know much about.
Mm-hmm.
It also really focuses on jurisdiction in Oklahoma. You know, there are 39 federally recognized tribes in the state of Oklahoma. A lot of people don't know that. That's
I
a
didn't know
lot of
that.
tribes.
That is.
And well, tribes have jurisdiction over crimes that are committed on tribal land. And so what happens during the course of this story and this investigation, Perry and Sophia are moving through different tribal nations, and they are crossing their fingers that each one of these police officers or light horsemen that we see in the five tribes, that's what they call them, will cooperate with these Oklahoma City detectives because they don't have to. Dells is abducted outside of Oklahoma City in the Seminole Nation. And so when they go to this abandoned truck stop to make their first steps in trying to figure out what has happened to her, they run into the Seminole light horsemen. And luckily, they do cooperate, but they also go through the Muskogee Creek Nation, the Kaw Nation, the Quapaws, the Shawnees. So it's kind of this wild ride, so to speak, crossing Oklahoma once they figure out where they think that she is. So,
yeah, it's fantastic. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, and then you would ask, why was I doing this? I had always wanted to write about missing and murdered, Indigenous women, but I also wanted to write about the horse relays somehow. And I've written over 100, books and articles, and almost all of them deal with Oklahoma and Indian Territory. So my family is there. This is where my tribe is from. That's where my tribe is, Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. My husband is Comanche. My family is buried there. So I know it very well. And authors should write what they know. And so that's what I do. I write about what I know.
Yeah, well, it really comes through. I've spent some time in this area of Oklahoma, and yet I felt like I learned so much. Like I could go back and be like, oh, I remember that, or even just the chiggers. I live in Colorado, so the
Oh,
first time I experienced chiggers, I was like, what are these things?
oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So Oklahoma was really its own character in so many ways. I felt like that was deliberate.
Oklahoma just has a very rich multicultural history, and the environment is also quite something. People think that Oklahoma is a dust bowl, and it absolutely
Mm.
is not. The
Oh,
western part of Oklahoma can be kind of dry, but the eastern part is lush, and they have a timber industry. There's more shoreline in Oklahoma than there is in Minnesota, which of course is a land of a hundred lakes or something, or 1,000 lakes. Oh, I
Thousand
can't
Lakes, I
remember,
think. Yeah.
but it's 1,000 lakes. So it is crisscrossed by rivers and streams and creeks. There are mountains and hills, and there are black bears that live there in Oklahoma,
Oh,
elk, deer. It's a hunter's paradise. It's also a bird watcher's paradise. So Oklahoma is a very interesting place, for a variety of reasons these
yeah.
days. So,
Definitely. Well, I had no idea there were that many tribal nations in Oklahoma. So that really became apparent through the book and was fascinating. But I also the relay races were really fascinating to me. I'm a lifelong horse person and I'd never heard of these. I found a video on your Instagram of one of the races, which was so cool. So do you participate? Do you do any of these races?
oh no, no, no. The Indian horse relay racing that we see right now really primarily takes place in the northern states. This
Okay.
was primarily started by the Shoshone Bannock
Okay.
tribes, and so they are the ones who really started this well over 100 years ago, because they were a real horse culture. And so for the story of Blood Relay, I had a race outside of Oklahoma City, but they really don't conduct races here. They did have one in Pawhuska, which is in the Osage Nation, about 4 or 5
Okay.
years ago, but they haven't had one since. So, for the sake of the story, I had the northern teams come down to Oklahoma. So, that part would be very realistic. We just don't have
Okay.
southern teams yet,
Okay.
which is really too bad because a lot of the tribes that are in Oklahoma really do have a rich horse history, but getting together for these horse relays is no small thing.
Yeah,
It's a real, it's a real culture in itself.
definitely. And the horse history just fascinates me, even down to you talk about the blue diamonds that they painted on the horses to symbolize the rattlesnakes. Would you share more about
Mm-hmm.
that and some of the history behind that?
Well, for the Choctaws, the rattlesnake was admired because of its ability to be, very stealthy, and it could lash out very quickly if it wanted to.
Mhm.
But if it didn't want to, it could just meld back in. And so,
Yeah.
they admired, this animal. And so this is why they would paint the diamonds, like the diamondback rattlesnake, the eastern
Okay.
rattlesnake, onto the horse's legs. And so if you go to an Indian horse relay race, you will see that the horses are decorated in various fashions. You might see handprints, circles around their eyes, or just different ways that different tribes would decorate their animals and themselves. So it's a
Cool.
show of their own cultural pride.
I love that. Yeah, it's and the horses you described too. I thought what was really cool is rather than saying a breed, the names really describe the horse. For example, and I apologize if I screw up the name. Is it Easy, the deer? Am I saying that
Issy,
right? Easy. Yeah.
Issy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I could just picture this slight kind of thoroughbred type horse from it. So that was really fun too.
Yeah, she's very light, light on her feet, kind of prances around, and she's kind of thin. And so that was why they named her Deer, essentially. So Isi
Yeah.
means deer.
Yeah. Yeah, I enjoyed, and the other animals, you talk a little bit about like the owls and how they mean different things to different tribal nations.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really cool too. Would you share a little bit with that?
Yes. So in Choctaw culture, we call, the great horned owl, we call him, it's an opa. And I actually have written several horror novels
Oh, yeah.
that deal with
Oh,
opas, and they are shapeshifters. Roads of My
okay.
Relations, I wrote that back in 2000. Yeah, except it was a long time
Wow.
ago. And Hatak Witches, which is about shape-shifting owls. But the role of the great horned owls in Choctaw culture is that they are omens that something bad is about to happen. That could be
Okay.
somebody's about to die or something, something else not so good is going to happen. So if you hear an owl hoot, people really sit up and take notice.
Okay.
And this is the same belief that a lot of other tribes have, but not every tribe believes that. Like Hopis, for example, owls are symbols of good luck.
Okay.
So tribes, as you probably know, are very different from each other. Not all tribes are the
Yeah.
same,
Yeah.
and they have different beliefs. So it wouldn't be, it's not unusual that the owl would have different meanings to different
Yeah.
tribes.
Yeah. Well, and the other folklore, sorry, can't talk, that you brought in was, and I loved it, the Champi. Am I saying that right?
Yes, the Shampi. You see my
You're
shirt.
wearing,
I'm
I was
wearing my
gonna say,
shirt in honor of the animals
yeah.
that you.
I
Yeah.
loved
So the
it.
Shampi. Yeah, the Shampi or Bigfoot or Sasquatch. There's a lot, tribes just have different names for this
Yeah.
extra large entity that is hairy. And depending on the tribe, so once again, we're just, got to
Yeah.
look at it tribe by tribe basis. For the Choctaws, they are big and smelly. And these entities followed the tribe when they were removed in the
Okay.
1830s. This is courtesy of Andrew Jackson's Indian removal policy. They were removed from Mississippi to Indian Territory. And so Champes, as well as other entities in the Choctaw cosmology pantheon, followed the tribe along. So a Champe lives in caves, the deep, dark places. And if you remember The Legend of Boggy Creek, remember those movies, the Boggy
Yeah.
Creek
Yeah.
legend? Those are
Yeah.
really old. Some of your viewers might be really young, but these are based on Champis that
Oh,
people
that's
now
cool.
will also call Bigfoot.
Yeah.
But if you go up in the Pacific Northwest, they're going to have completely different names.
Okay. Wow,
Yeah.
that's so fascinating. It was so fun when you brought that in. I don't want to give too much away, so we won't say how they come in, but it was a fun part of the murder mystery clues, and so yeah, that was neat. I enjoyed that very much. Um, I I'd love to talk about another nonfiction book you wrote, which is
Mhm.
Ned Christie, The Creation of an Outlaw and Cherokee Hero.
Mhm.
I saw this on your Instagram, and it really made me think to myself, gosh, there's so much history that we are never taught. And a book like this is so important. Will you share a little bit about that with us?
Sure. Ned Christie. Gosh, I should have a copy of that book just right here. Well, Ned Christie was a Cherokee. And in 1887, Ned Christie was a Cherokee National Council member. And he was accused of killing a U.S. Deputy Marshal named Sam Maples. And to make a very long story short, Ned did not do this. But there were a variety of bona fide outlaws in the
Mhm.
vicinity of Tahlequah, Oklahoma, which is today the capital of the Cherokee Nation. And so for the
Okay.
next 5 years of his life, Ned Christie had to avoid posses and various people who were trying to take pot shots at him,
Wow.
who were trying to take him out because they were so angered that he had killed a law enforcement officer, but he had not really done that. And in 5 years later, 1892, finally a posse did go to his home. It was a huge posse. It was like 16 men. And they
Wow.
just could not break through this fortified log cabin that he had built. It was great big Oklahoma tree timbers. So they
Nice.
finally used dynamite to blow up
Oh,
his house. And they shot him as he ran out the door, kind of like, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. If you remember
Yeah.
that movie, at the end, he comes running out literally with his guns in his hands, and they shot him and killed him right there. And this is where the legend of Ned Christie really took off, because newspaper men of that day would create the most bizarre headlines to try to
Yeah.
get your attention. We didn't have
Yeah.
social media, obviously,
Right.
but they had newspapers with giant letters and crazy headlines. And you would say, I want to read that story. And so
Yeah.
they would make up these stories about this wild and crazy outlaw, Ned Christie, who shot men, women, children. He robbed banks. He did all these things. He didn't do any of those things, but anything to sell your paper. And this legend of Ned just kept on going and going. Even today, people will say this. But what is interesting about Ned, I knew, know his descendants, and one who
Okay.
who really was a good friend named Roy Hamilton, who died as the book went to press. He was really the collector of Ned's stories, and he told
Okay.
me that so many of Ned's relatives were being murdered after Ned was killed, that they brought in a Cherokee medicine man to perform a ceremony so that nobody would know about the Christie family for 100 years. And
Okay.
so for that period of time, we just saw all kinds of horrible stories that were just slanderous, libelous, and people saying horrible things about the family. But nobody was speaking back or pushing back because nobody was supposed to know about the family. Well, 100 years to the day, as Roy said, it was almost like the clouds lifted, and all of a sudden, all this information is readily available, and people started talking about Ned. And so he wrote a little book about Ned. It was just kind of
Oh,
like a
cool.
pamphlet. And so I took the cue from him, and then I carried on and just found scads of information, all these stories, and I really did. I know that I proved that Ned didn't do it, and I know
Yeah.
who did do it. But people don't like that. They want to believe what they want to believe.
Yeah.
But he's an absolutely fascinating character, and if your viewers look up Ned Christie, you'll see a picture. There's an iconic picture of Ned standing there. He's got his rifle, and he's got his pistol across his chest. He's got waist length hair. If you compare that picture to the poster of Clint Eastwood's movie The Outlaw Josie Wales, you
Oh,
can see
yeah.
that Clint Eastwood took that picture as his own for Outlaw Josie Wales, because it's almost identical. Yeah. So Ned
Wow.
has been a model for a lot of stories.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at first I was surprised when I read about some of the pushback you've received from this book. But then I'm like, well, it's
Mhm.
even more important to get his story out there, the accurate story. Yeah.
Well, before we started this, I told you the pushback may not have been so much if I had been a man who wrote this.
Hmm.
And circling back to Blood Relay, I also wrote this because I am a firm believer in writing truthful stories about Native women who are
Yes.
problem solvers, who are not victims, who can
Yes.
be law enforcement agents and detectives, and they can go out there and deal with these miscreants and these murderers, and they get the job done. And so
Yeah.
that was really even kind of the overarching one of the overarching reasons that I did this is because I'm tired of the stereotypes of natives in general, but in particular native women,
Yeah.
who we don't really see them as heroines very often. If we see a movie like Wind River, for example,
Right.
that was about, missing, murdered women, on the Wind River reservation up north. It's a white man who comes to deal with the bad guys.
It's
And
true.
if you review that
It's true.
movie, there's any number of Native people actually who could have stepped in and done
Yeah.
that, but they
Yeah.
didn't, because the
Yeah.
director or writer or whoever didn't allow it. But for Blood Relay, I was going to make that happen. And so for the sequel, which
Love
is
it.
called Fatal Depths,
Oh, good.
Sophia and Perry are back at it. and they are just as strong, if not stronger, than
I
the blood
love that.
relay. So
I love that. How much of Perry is you? Like, or how much of Perry is someone you know? Or is she, I mean, just speaking about how strong women, Native women, all of us are.
mhm.
Uh, how did you create her character? Because I just loved her.
She's a conglomerate of real Native women that I know and admire. You
Okay.
know, I know Native women lawyers and athletes and accountants and writers, and we are all of those things
Yeah.
that non-natives are, but we don't
Yeah.
get to see them. And so I made Perry, you know, now granted, her partner Sophia, she is a D1 athlete. You know, she's
Hmm.
over 6 feet tall and she's
Yeah.
strong and she has her roles to play. And Perry isn't quite as big, but Perry is very, she's volatile, but she's very persistent.
Yes.
And she loves her animals. She's got her dog Ripley that runs with her, and you know, I had to say that because of what your show does. And Ripley
Yeah.
actually saves her, you know, when
Mhm.
Perry's being chased down by a truck, you know, albeit she gets hurt, but smart doggy. And so
Yeah.
animals play a big thing in everything that I write too. So I may be getting off the
I,
track, but I keep coming back to.
oh no, that's right. No, this is fascinating. It's fun to learn more. And the other really strong character I loved was Raquel and part of the Lighthorse. I had never heard of that branch of law enforcement that it was Lighthorse. So I'd love to hear more about that. Like I said, your book just I felt like I learned so much history. I just loved it.
Well, the light horsemen were a group of law enforcement men, of course, that were started by the Cherokee Nation back in I think it was 1822. And it was a group of men who were on horseback who were given permission by the chief to ride through the Cherokee Nation to take care of transgressors. And oftentimes they were given carte blanche to just fire away, you know, if they had to. But
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, they would just drag the criminals back, you know, to jail. And so as time went by, the light horsemen kind of faded a little bit because we saw the rise of sheriffs and assistant sheriffs and high sheriffs. There's all these different levels of sheriffs. But today, among the 5 tribes, the Cherokees, Choctaws, Chickasaws, Muskogee Creeks, and Seminoles, you have their policemen and women, and they are known as the Light Horse. And if you drive through those nations, you might get to see their patrol cars, and it says Light Horse on their police vehicle.
That's
So Raquel is not only a light horse Choctaw, she also is the descendant of a freedman.
okay.
And freedmen, of course, are those uh, freed slaves because those tribes did, not everybody in the tribe had slaves, some of them did. But after the Civil War, they were freed, hence freedmen and women.
Yeah.
And those tribes have separate freedmen roles. And so
Okay.
if you are a descendant of freedmen or women, you can trace your family back to those roles. And they're readily, you can look online. I mean, they're online.
Okay.
And so that is what Raquel is. She's part black, but she also is of Choctaw blood. And so Perry mentions, you know, on one side, you know, she looks black and she turns her head and she
Yeah.
morphs into a native woman, but
Yeah.
she's also a Marine. And
Yes.
so Raquel is this little pint size, you know, battering ram, essentially, who does not take anything off of anybody. And she's essential to this story. And I just really
She is.
wanted to put her in there because I love the idea of her.
Yeah, I loved all three of these women together and solving this mystery. And I am so excited. One of my questions was going to be, is there going to be another book? So I was excited to hear you say that. Tell us, give us a little teaser on the next one.
Well, the next one is called Fatal Depths, and
Okay.
it will be out a year after this one came out, which I think is February 9th, something. And in this story, Perry and Sophia are trying to figure out why was an undercover Oklahoma City narcotics officer shot in the head in Dokesville, which is an abandoned ghost town in the Choctaw Nation, which is about
Wow.
3.5 hours out of their jurisdiction.
Okay.
But they are assigned because Perry knows that area very well. She's been to Dokesville many, many times. So, in the course of this investigation, they realized that, hey, wait a minute, is this really narcotics? What was this man involved
Yeah.
in? And again, this takes them through a series of, I think, very fascinating Oklahoma stories. That is Oklahoma lore, which
Okay.
brings in outlaws. It brings in the very distant past of Oklahoma. And we're bringing that to the present. So it shows that Perry and Sophia have to go to the Oklahoma Historical Society, to the Gilchrist
Okay.
Museum, and they're looking through the archives and letters. And I love those kinds of stories where you're piecing together old letters, but a page is missing. And how are we going to figure this out? Because this word is smeared, that kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I think it's more twisty
Okay.
than Blood Relay. I like it so.
Cool. I can't wait to read it. It's going to be awesome. And uh, just shifting gears slightly, tell us about what you do at Kansas University, about your job there.
Well, I'm a historian by training.
Okay.
So when I got to KU, I initially was in the Indigenous Studies program. And so I teach a variety of courses ranging from Indian history to 1865 and since
Okay.
1865. That's kind of the requisite cutoff or thing, for most people.
Okay.
And then I've taught American Indian treaty law.
Wow.
I also teach because I also do write about Indigenous foodways. So I've got
Cool.
two award-winning books that deal with traditional ways of eating and what is it that has happened to Native people through the years to where they have unprecedented rates of diabetes and obesity and high blood
Wow.
pressure and all that. So I teach courses in Indigenous food sovereignty
Oh,
and
wow.
Latin America foodways. And that all brings in issues of environment and climate change and revitalizing gardening and seed
Yeah.
keeping
Wow.
and resurgence of bison ranching,
Okay.
bringing back
Yeah.
and gathering and things like that. So I have gardens, in my
I
yard, and
love
I
it.
also have the American Indian Health and Diet Project.
So
So my
cool.
book, Recovering Our Ancestors' Gardens, has a cookbook in the back and also a
Oh,
curriculum
cool.
guide for people
Okay.
who are interested in that kind of thing. But it
Yeah.
discusses the traditions of native foodways.
Oh, I love it. Oh,
So
that's so
that's what I
cool.
teach. Yeah. So
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. And I also enjoyed on your Instagram, you have a little snake friend who I was like, she is so brave. I'm such a
oh
snake
yes, the
wuss.
rat snakes. Rat
Yes.
snakes. Well, my
Yeah.
chickens, the rat snakes will come and they want an egg. And I don't
Yeah.
mind, come in and
Yeah.
get an egg and then they go away and then they come back and they know they can't eat the chicken,
Yeah.
and the chickens know they can't eat them. So occasionally I'll go out there and I'll reach under a hen to get eggs and there's a
Yeah.
snake curled up waiting for the egg to drop. But we don't have chicks, so I don't worry about them
Okay.
getting eaten or
Okay.
anything. We do have baby bunnies out in my garden, and
Yeah.
sometimes they disappear, so I know where they're going. But rat snakes are great. I mean, they're easy to
Yeah.
catch, and I say, okay, enough. You need to. I'm going to take you somewhere else, and
Yeah.
they're misunderstood.
Yeah.
They're great. I love them. I like snakes. I don't have a problem with snakes or
Yeah.
spiders or anything like that. So.
I love that. I love that. I had a snake who moved into my barn for a summer and I had to make I was like, I'm gonna make peace with you because I get squeamish. So when I
Mhm.
saw your picture, I thought that is so cool. The other thing I thought was really cool is it sounds like you did some sled dog races.
Mhm.
Uh, would
Yeah.
you mind sharing a little bit about that or
Yeah, I did. I raced sled dogs for 16 years when we lived in
wow.
Flagstaff, Arizona. And people
Okay.
here, Arizona, what do you mean? But we're at
Yeah.
7,000 feet.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the group there was the Arizona Mountain Mushers. And when I first moved to Flagstaff in 1989, we actually had 4 distinct seasons and there was a lot of snow. So sometimes at Thanksgiving, be 3 feet of snow on the ground.
Yeah.
But every year, as the climate changed, the snow came later and later and later. So by the time we moved in 2005, there wasn't snow sometimes until mid-January.
Yeah.
So I would train my dogs on my ATV,
Okay.
so the dogs would run, I'm behind them on the ATV. When I first started, I did it with my bicycle, which was a
Oh my
terrible
gosh.
idea because they'd see an
Holy
elk
cow.
and
Yeah.
they would just work, and I'd go flying, and I cracked my jaw one time,
Oh my
broke my
gosh.
teeth. So you need an ATV if you're going to do that, or a very heavy sledge kind of thing. But yeah, I did sprint racing.
Okay.
I didn't do the long distance crazy thing like you see, the Iditarod.
Yeah.
Um, but there were some people in our club who did the 100-mile races, and they would travel up to Montana or Wyoming. My
Wow.
lead dog was a German Shorthair named
Okay.
Chalky.
Oh,
He was all
cool.
legs and lungs, and sometimes it was cold, and so
Yeah.
we put on, little pads. But that's the dog of choice for some mushers who do distance racing, but they get
I
the
didn't
German
realize
short
that.
hairs from Germany. I think are bigger, their hair is a little longer, and they have a little more
Okay.
hair, maybe. And then they put on a coat that covers up, their male bits, because that can really get frostbite,
Oh,
you
I
know.
bet. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I did that for a very long time. I also ski jored, which is a sport of being
Wow.
pulled on skis by dogs.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever do it
I
with the
miss that.
horses? Sometimes in
No,
Steamboat,
but
they'll
that's
do
what
it
they
with
do in
horses.
Norway. I
Is
think
it? Okay.
Norway is
Yeah.
that's the real ski joring. So I don't know about
So
that.
cool.
Unless the snow's real deep, it's slow it down a little bit. I don't know. That
Yeah.
sounds scary.
Definitely. Well, that's so cool. I really appreciate you sharing so much and coming on the show today. And so thank you so much.
Thank you. I really appreciate it too. This has been a fun conversation. I like being able to talk about animals and just
Yeah.
having a freewheeling conversation. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you. And everyone, if you love horses, uh, fascinating setting, history, all of the above, thrilling mystery, Blood Relay is the book for you. And until next time, keep your tails wagging and pages turning. Thanks for joining me today. Sit, Stay, Read is a part of the Authors on the Air Global Network. If you enjoyed today's author interview, be sure to leave a review and share the episode with a fellow animal-loving reader. If you're curious about the world of working dogs and wilderness adventures, please check out my books at KathleenDonnelly.com. Until next time, curl up with your best furry friend and sit, stay, read.